Hey folks, welcome to Moonshift Audio. This week I'm going to show you how to recreate the entire backing track to Fame is a Gun by Addison Rae. Here's a preview. The production on Addison's recent album was seriously great, and there are some quite unusual choices in the sound design which I really enjoyed unpicking for this video. Before we get stuck in, I'm just going to introduce myself quickly. My name's Jack. I'm a producer and a mix engineer based in the UK. If you'd like to hear how I can help you take your songs from half finished or sort of almost there to the point where you're actually excited to release them, then you can get in touch at moonshiftaudio.com or just drop me a comment down below. I put out a new video every week, so please do like and subscribe. But for now, let's take a look at this backing track. I should mention that although I do use Cubase, there's nothing in this tutorial that wouldn't translate easily to any other software. Alright, let's get stuck in. Alright, so here we are in the session. And the first thing I'm going to show you is this main sort of keys pluck sound that is throughout pretty much the entire track. It sounds like this. This is a good example of one of the things I love about the production on Addison's recent music, which is that it's quite a simple line, it's repeated, but it is actually slightly unusual and it's an interesting sound. So we'll get stuck into this first, and then a little bit later on I'm going to show you the bass, the drums, and some other really nice production elements for this track. So I've made this up out of two layers. There's a low one, which is sort of playing the main notes, if you like, which looks like this. And I've done this in Serum. It's basically a saw wave and a square wave. Not much exciting going on here, and it's just got a little bit of an envelope on the filter to give it that plucky. And then there's another layer playing a slightly different set of notes, which sounds like this. And this one's even more simple. It's literally just a square wave. Got that same envelope, working on the filter frequency to give it that kind of plucky vibe. But we're also using that same envelope. Well, actually, it's a different envelope, but we're just doing a little bit of modulation on the pulse width, just to give that a little bit more character, that sound. And this one is panned ever so slightly to the right, which is something that I noticed in the original track. So that's both together. I've got them coming to a group here where I'm putting on a little bit of chorus and a compressor. So if you want to hear what that's like without those. This chorus is really subtle, the mix is quite low. Just adding a little bit of width. And then we're just sort of thickening it all up, gluing it together with a Pro C2. So that is our main backbone sound that goes throughout the whole track. The next element to come in after the intro is the drums, and then we're going to get onto the bass and some really interesting kind of flute hits in a minute. So drums, super simple. I pulled this kick off of Splice. It's a Sennheiser, really punchy, kind of almost EDM style kick. And I got a few clap sounds just to audition. Ended up going with the first one in the end. And that is basically the drums. Here's what the pattern looks like. Couldn't be more simple. 4 to the floor kicks with a clap on every other beat. And that's our drums. So we're getting over towards the bass now. We let that roll for a little bit. And then we just drop out the kicks. So the bass for this track is a really simple patch. I've just bypassed the effects for now, and we'll have a quick look at what I've done in Serum. So I've got two oscillators. The first one, I'm using the mini Moog style wave shapes. This is a saw wave. I have got a filter on there just to take out the highs. And then I've got an octave below that, a sine wave. And that's what's really giving you that kind of like earth-shaking thickness down below. Really boosting the bass with a Pro Q, taking out a little bit of the mud, and then pumping that with a kickstart on this I think it's a sub-bass chain preset. Now, in the full track, there's a little bit of kind of distorted high end. So what I've done is I've made another layer here with another basic mini saw wave. I've put a little bit of pulse width on that, filtering it out with a high pass filter, and then just using a trash to rough that up and taking off the highs as well because it was just a bit too fizzy. And that just adds a little bit of high end interest. Alright, and now we've got these flute hits. There are some really interesting sounds. There's like this crazy kind of like organ layer and this sort of weird pitch bent voice thing that I'm going to get onto in a bit. But for now, yeah, these flute hits, I love it. This is a kind of like signature throughout the track. And it's just so unusual. It's 2 notes, it's dead simple. But I love that they threw this in there. So I'm using a preset from Analog Lab called Dirty Flute. Here's what the patch sounds like with all my effects bypassed. Not dirty enough if you ask me, but we can fix that. So first up, Trash from iZotope on a preset called Whipper that I've tweaked a bit. That's roughing that up a lot already. Then this is just a stock distortion from Cubase. Roughing that up even more. Then Quadrafuzz, which is another Cubase effect. You could use any kind of distortion or fuzz really. As you may be able to tell, the name of the game here is just absolutely destroying this sound. Then Echo Boy. This is on a dotted 8th. And then a bit of room. This is on a really low mix, 20%. Just to give that a bit of space. So let's take a listen to that in the mix. Got a little bit of a breakdown now. Everything drops out. Now we're back into the second verse, which is super straightforward. Just that pluck sound and the drums. Get another drop out here. I'd love to drop the a cappella into this, but I don't want this video to get taken down, so you just have to imagine Addison singing in these gaps and over the whole track. Now we're back, and I'm just going to skip forward because the next element that comes in is this Moog Lead sound. Now, when I heard this in the original track, I was just like, this is definitely, I'm using the Mini V from Arturia, which I love, and I tweaked a sort of funk solo preset. Here's what it sounds like. Dry. Boosting the top and carving out the lows with a Pro Q3. And then just adding a bit of reverb there. And this is where the track starts to sort of shift gears and we add some new layers. So there's a couple of really simple layers, which I'm going to look at now, and then we're going to get onto this wacky organ layer and then this crazy pitch bend vocal thing. So basically what we're doing at the moment is just adding a couple of really simple saw layers that are playing the same notes as the bass. So this is literally just a sawtooth waveform from the J&O wavetable in Serum, which is based on a Roland Juno synth. And I've done nothing. There's not even a filter on this. We're just playing the same exact notes as the bass. And then I've got the same notes again, but for this patch, it's identical, except I've put it up 7 semitones. And what that means is I haven't got to worry about transposing the notes. I can just copy the notes. So whatever the bass plays, this can play, and we'll get this nice 7th. Lovely. Let's hear that with the rest of the track. Just that kind of like mid and low mid range is suddenly filled out, and the whole track just really starts to come together at this point. I love this way of arranging things where the track just builds and builds and builds up to a crescendo. The other layer that we got at this point is this really interesting organ layer. Now I made this patch with a couple of triangle waves, one's an octave up, and I'm modulating the pitch. Just a fine tune, nice fast LFO, not on the lower oscillator, only on the higher one. And I have taken just a very, very sparkly top end on. This doesn't feature too kind of high in the mix. It's quite quiet, as you can hear there. But it does really add something. Here's the line that it's playing. And I particularly like the way that this line interacts with the Moog Lead and those distorted flute hits. Let's take a listen. Really interesting sound design choices here from Addison's producer, but I love it. We develop the drums a bit at this point. There's a kind of breakdown in the track, and all that happens is we add in a shaker. I'm using an old favorite Skaker for that. You'll hear it now. And we're just automating the pan on that so that it moves left to right. Obviously dropped out the drums and the bass. Just the claps back in and that saw layer. You can feel the energy building. And now we're sort of balls to the wall now, all in, and amongst other things, we've got this really unusual kind of pitch bent sound. Now, I'm using augmented voices from Arturia for this, but I don't necessarily know if the original was made with a voice instrument. It just, to me, felt like the instrument that I would use to get in the ballpark quickly. So let's just take a quick listen to that. Really, really odd, and I am doing a bit of EQ there, and I'm driving that quite hard through a decapitator. Just here it's giving that a bit of a volume boost, and it's helping it cut through the mix with a few harmonics. So let's just take a listen to everything all together. And this is sort of the final choruses now. And just for the last repetition, we get some changes in the bass notes. There you go. Some really nice, unusual sound design choices there to make what I think is a really good backing track to Fame as a Gun. That's it for this week, but please do like and subscribe for more tips, tricks, resources and downloads from me at Moonshift Audio. Till next time.